The galactic predators descended into the mist-laden jungle, their landing barely audible, yet flawlessly executed. Clad in dark, gleaming armor equipped with weapons and hunting tools, they moved with a fluid precision that spoke of countless hunts across the stars. Each predator had pursued prey across diverse worlds, from feeble creatures to fierce, monstrous beasts. But today, their target was merely human, a tiny speck in the grand cosmic tapestry. They expected a swift, effortless victory. Silently, they fanned out, with sensors sweeping through the trees and thick underbrush, eyes dissecting each shadow. Their species thrived on the thrill of stalking and domination, priding themselves on an unyielding approach to the hunt. As they advanced, the fog-shrouded jungle and hum of unseen creatures felt as routine as any alien terrain they had previously conquered. Yet one predator paused, sensing a subtle shift of detail that felt out of place. He quickly dismissed it, certain of their mission. After all, this was only a human. Deeper within the jungle, a solitary figure moved with soundless precision, listening as the predators dispersed. Focused and expertly blending with the surrounding shadows, this survivor had anticipated the hunter's approach, sensing their presence even before they touched down. Every step was calculated, as if the jungle itself guided them in a careful dance of silence, knowing that the faintest sound could reveal their position. As the predators advanced, they found a lone footprint in the mud, strategically placed to suggest a panicked escape. They sneered at the trail, following it further into the jungle's depths. Confident in their superiority, they missed subtle signs around them, carefully arranged twigs and displaced rocks, each a clue designed to mislead. Unseen, the survivor observed their every move, reading the jungle as if it were part of their own body. This was not mere hiding, it was mastery, a seamless merging of being with the terrain. As the predators ventured deeper, their confidence swelled, unaware of the danger around them. Another sign appeared, a shred of fabric caught on a thorn bush, deliberately placed. The jungle itself seemed to grow more treacherous, though they paid no heed. One predator let out a silent laugh, viewing the human as nothing more than a clumsy, desperate creature. But then, another small detail caught one hunter's eye, a broken branch at an unnatural angle. Though it unsettled him momentarily, he brushed off his suspicion and continued onward. Hours passed, and their path grew winding and unexpected. A creeping sensation of being watched crept in, but they attributed it to the unfamiliar jungle. Meanwhile, the survivor tracked them from afar, utilizing a network of trails and hideouts, always 2 steps ahead. The first trap triggered when the lead hunter felt a slight tug on his ankle. A concealed wire tightened, and a heavy log swung from above, catching him off guard and fracturing his armor. His comrades jumped to action, scanning the area, yet they found nothing but shadows. Silence fell heavier than before, as they began to realize this was no ordinary prey. Growing frustrated, another predator fired randomly into the jungle, failing to notice a near-invisible tripwire. He triggered a hidden spike trap that pierced his leg, prompting him to pull away with a sharp hiss of pain. The remaining hunters regrouped, their confidence shaken. They sensed their target was both capable and dangerously unpredictable, for the first time feeling the sting of being outmaneuvered. The survivor, watching from above, noted their faltering confidence. Each snare, each misstep by the hunters, was crafted to unnerve them further. Moving deeper, the predators felt the jungle pressing in, each shift in the shadows seeming part of the survivor's plan. Hours passed, nerves stretched thin, and their once sure-footed steps became hesitant and guarded. A subtle rustle to their right made the rear hunter turn, weapon at the ready. Yet there was only the dense, impenetrable jungle. He fired, the crackling energy ripping through branches, but his shot found no target. Silence returned, amplifying their growing sense of dread. The jungle seemed to have become an accomplice, a silent ally to the survivor. Their arrogance turned to wariness as they pushed further, every step met by an invisible, suffocating pressure. They caught glimpses of a fleeting shadow in their peripheral vision, yet whenever they raised their weapons, it was gone. This was no ordinary hunt. It was psychological warfare, a game where every moment could be their last. They pressed on, unwilling to retreat, but now aware this would not be a clean, simple victory. Their target had transformed from prey to a relentless shadow. What began as a chase for sport had become a test of survival, one the predators were slowly realizing they might not survive. Moving forward, the leader urged his team into a tighter formation. Eyes scanned each inch of the terrain, every shadow analyzed for threats. They knew now they were not the hunters but the hunted, and every part of this jungle seemed to work against them. As night fell, a rhythmic hum pierced the air, a sound that stirred the leaves into a trembling dance. The jungle waited, ready for the hunt to begin anew. The survivor melted into the shadows, prepared for what was to come. This was their ground, and they would defend it with silent, unyielding resolve. Here, the rules were different. Here, the hunter and prey were one and the same, and only one would emerge victorious. With the hum of the approaching ship growing louder, the jungle seemed to tense, bracing for another invasion. The survivor, concealed in the dense foliage, watched as the ship's shadow passed overhead, scanning the forest floor in search of their lost hunting party. The survivor understood that the predators' numbers would only increase, each group armed with greater weaponry and stronger resolve to reclaim their honor. With careful, practiced hands, the survivor finished erasing any traces of the previous battle, making the jungle appear untouched. Each trap had been dismantled, each footprint smoothed into the earth, leaving the jungle's dense, ancient floor as pristine as it had been before. They knew that no sign of the previous encounter would remain, not even a broken twig or disturbed leaf to betray their presence. Yet, standing in the midst of the cleared battleground, the survivor's gaze hardened. The predators would return, but they would not be met with passive defenses. Nearby, a single relic remained, the broken spear bearing the survivor's message, carved in symbols that the predators would recognize. Positioned upright in the soil, it served as a silent warning: you are not welcome here. This message would reach the hunters when they landed, a chilling marker of the fate that had befallen their comrades. As the survivor slipped back into the shadows, the hum of the landing craft filled the forest. The alien warriors emerged, their armor glinting under the jungle's filtered light, eyes scanning warily, taking in the surroundings with an uneasy alertness. They moved cautiously, tracing the path that had led their predecessors to their demise. They paused at the spear, reading the message with a mixture of anger and reluctant awe. Despite their caution, these new hunters felt a pressing sense of dread as they ventured into the jungle. They were like their predecessors, masters of many worlds, but here they were stripped of that assurance. The forest around them whispered of traps unseen, of shadows that would not yield. The survivor, watching from a hidden vantage, assessed each movement with a keen, relentless focus. Every step the new hunting party took was weighed, anticipated, and countered in the survivor's mind. As they advanced, they found themselves walking into a silent labyrinth of traps, each one more calculated than the last. The jungle was now an active participant, concealing snares and ambushes woven seamlessly into its natural landscape. A slight pull on a vine triggered a cascade of sharp stones from above, scattering the hunters and leaving one reeling in pain, armor dented and pride shattered. Another hunter was ensnared by a barely visible tripwire, sending him sprawling into a pit, while his comrades watched in shock. The forest began to close in around them, each rustle of leaves, each distant echo a reminder that they were intruders in a place that resisted them. The survivor moved like a ghost through the underbrush, observing the rising frustration and growing fear in the hunter's eyes. They were now fully aware that this was no mere human they were hunting, but an adversary capable of matching and outthinking them at every turn. This jungle had become a fortress, each tree and shadow an ally to the survivor, transforming it into a living labyrinth of peril. Even as the hunters regrouped, their weapons ready, they felt the weight of being outmatched. The survivors' traps had stripped them of their confidence and heightened their fears, leaving them with the unsettling realization that they were no longer the pursuers. One by one, the hunters fell, ensnared by an unseen opponent who knew the land intimately. Each defeat, each wound inflicted, drove home a singular truth: they were no longer the apex predators they believed themselves to be. Their prey had become a master of survival, a relentless force moving through the jungle with intent and precision. The hunters' numbers dwindled, each trap meticulously orchestrated to break their will, to remind them that they were trespassers. At last, the final hunter stood alone, battered and drained, surrounded by a jungle that had swallowed his team. His vision blurred, his pride beaten, he understood the full extent of his defeat. This survivor had outwitted, outfought, and outlasted the galaxy's most fearsome hunters. The survivor's message etched into the earth, the remains of the battle, and the eerie silence that had settled over the jungle left no doubt. This place was defended by one who had become one with it. As the hunter took his final, shallow breaths, the forest whispered in the wind, reclaiming its quiet dominance. The jungle had become a sanctum, a place where even the fiercest hunters knew they would find neither victory nor escape. And as the survivor melted back into the jungle's depths, the forest resumed its watchful silence, prepared for the inevitable return of those who would not heed its warning. Each new hunt would end as the last, for in this place, the roles of predator and prey had forever changed. The jungle settled into an eerie calm as the last traces of the hunter's presence faded, the shadows deepening with the encroaching night. For the survivor, it was merely another beginning. They moved with practiced quiet, assessing the traps and paths that had served them so well, already planning adjustments and refinements for the next encounter. Each trap, each tactic, was considered, tested, and reset with an unyielding precision. This place was their domain, and they would defend it with relentless, unwavering dedication. High above, the faintest shimmer marked the retreat of the predator ship, bearing the grim evidence of their defeat. Despite the loss, they would not easily give up their claim on this world. The survivor knew well that they would return perhaps with more hunters, advanced weaponry, and new strategies aimed at reclaiming their lost honor. Yet the survivor's resolve remained unshaken, a force honed by years of survival and the intimate knowledge of this land. The jungle had shaped them, and now they moved within it, as though each tree, each root, and each shadow were an extension of themselves. They were both guardian and warrior, a silent watcher defending their territory with a strategic ferocity that no weapon could match. The jungle had not merely been their refuge, it was their partner, their weapon, and it welcomed them back into its dark embrace as the rightful protector. As the hours passed and dawn broke, casting soft rays of light through the dense canopy, the jungle came to life around them. Birds chirped from high branches, and unseen creatures stirred, oblivious to the recent battle. To these native beings, the survivor was a familiar presence, another shadow among shadows, blending seamlessly into the fabric of the jungle. Meanwhile, beyond the jungle's edge, whispers of the hunter's defeat would ripple through their ranks, stirring unease among those who had yet to encounter this world. The tales would speak of a seemingly uninhabited planet with an impenetrable wilderness and a mysterious force that turned every path into a labyrinth, every step into a calculated danger. Those who heard these stories would feel a chill, an inkling of the unknown menace awaiting them if they dared to enter. But the survivor was undeterred. They had faced the hunters and emerged victorious, not through brute force but through mastery of the land, patience, and unbreakable will. Their spirit had fused with the jungle, an alliance forged through countless struggles. They would remain, a specter in the undergrowth, vigilant and unyielding, ready for the next encounter. Far above, the stars twinkled in the vastness of space, indifferent to the battles unfolding beneath them. But the survivor knew the truth: this ground was theirs, marked by the sweat, blood, and silent victories that had been etched into the soil. They had transformed the jungle into a fortress and a sanctuary, where even the fiercest hunters became prey. And so, as night fell once more, the jungle held its breath, waiting with silent anticipation. The survivor melted into the shadows, a figure of unwavering strength and resilience. They were ready, as they had always been, for the next hunt to begin. And when the hunters returned, they would find no easy victory, only the relentless spirit of one who had become legend, a guardian bound to the jungle, prepared to defend it until the stars themselves faded from the sky. As the days passed, the jungle seemed to shift subtly, responding to the survivor's presence with a heightened awareness. The canopy thickened, vines twisted into new paths, and the undergrowth grew dense and treacherous, almost as if the land itself was preparing for the next encounter. The survivor moved through this living labyrinth with silent confidence, resetting traps and fortifying hiding spots, each one a part of a larger web of defenses. The forest had become an ally, bending to their will, responding to their needs in ways that bordered on the uncanny. Every trace of the previous hunt had been erased, leaving no sign of the fallen or their defeat. Only the carved spear remained, half buried and obscured by foliage, its warning clear to any who dared enter. As the survivor moved deeper into the jungle's heart, they felt a familiar calm settle over them. The silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or distant bird calls, was a language they understood, a rhythm they had synchronized with over time. Above, in the endless void of space, rumors of the jungle's defender began to circulate. The predators spoke of a human who was no mere prey, but an adversary who had bested them on their own terms, a master of terrain and tactics, who wielded the jungle itself as a weapon. It was a tale that filled even the most seasoned hunters with a rare, unnerving doubt. And yet, for every hunter who hesitated, others burned with the desire to face this elusive survivor, each one determined to reclaim the honor lost by those before them. It wasn't long before another ship appeared in the sky, its engines low and menacing as it descended through the clouds. This time, the Predators had brought an elite team, armed with advanced detection tools, heavy armor, and weapons designed to turn any terrain into mere backdrop. They moved with cautious precision, their leader scanning the landscape as the ship hovered overhead, its sensors sweeping across the treetops and thick jungle floor. The survivor watched from a concealed vantage point, noting each hunter's position and weaponry with keen, calculating eyes. They could see that these hunters were different, more prepared, more cautious. The Predators moved in coordinated silence, each step calculated, each glance sharp, as if aware they were stepping into the territory of an unseen foe. They advanced slowly, weapons drawn, their eyes dissecting every shadow, every rustle of the leaves. But the jungle was vast, and its silence seemed to deepen as they progressed. The survivor moved through their network of hidden paths, blending into the landscape, adjusting their plan with every movement the hunters made. This hunt would be different. These were not the same overconfident hunters of before. These ones would need a new level of cunning. As the Predators moved further in, the first subtle signs of the survivor's traps began to appear. A tripwire hidden beneath a layer of leaves caused a concealed log to swing with silent precision, striking one of the hunters in the side. He staggered, armor dented, but kept his stance. Another stumbled upon a hidden pit camouflaged with branches and leaves, barely catching himself before falling into the spikes below. Their leader called for a halt, eyes narrowing as he surveyed the path ahead, recognizing the presence of an enemy who anticipated their every step. The jungle itself seemed to come alive, shadows twisting with each flicker of movement. The hunters advanced, wary but undeterred, yet their steps grew slower, their gazes more cautious. For every inch they gained, the survivor had already planned 2 steps ahead, using the dense jungle to mask their movements, turning every obstacle into a potential weapon. Then, just as the hunters began to regroup, a faint sound reached their ears, a rhythmic beat, low and steady. The leader paused, listening intently, signaling his team to hold position. They scanned the jungle for the source, but there was nothing, only the rustling leaves and distant calls of unseen creatures. The beat continued, however, rising in volume, unsettling in its strange familiarity. Unseen by the hunters, the survivor observed their growing unease with a quiet satisfaction. This was not simply a hunt, it was psychological warfare. The rhythmic sound was no accident, it was a calculated distraction, a steady reminder of the survivor's control over the jungle, over the pace of the hunt. For the hunters, each step forward was met with mounting tension, a growing sense that they were not the ones in control. The leader, determined to turn the hunt in his favor, signaled his team to split, sending them in separate directions to cover more ground. But the survivor anticipated this move, tracking each hunter with silent precision, waiting until they were isolated, vulnerable. One by one, the traps were sprung. A falling branch struck one hunter down, while another stumbled into a concealed net, hoisted into the air before he could react. The jungle was a maze of carefully laid snares, and the hunters began to realize, too late, that each step took them deeper into a meticulously crafted web. The survivor moved in the shadows, observing, adjusting, letting the jungle do its work. Each trap, each unsettling sound, served a single purpose: to break the hunter's resolve. As the hours passed, the once organized team was scattered, battered, their coordination fractured. Their leader, alone now, could feel the jungle pressing in, a living entity that seemed to close in tighter with each passing moment. He staggered through the dense undergrowth, his senses dulled by exhaustion, fear gnawing at his mind. He knew they had failed, the jungle had bested them. The survivor outmaneuvered them at every turn. Each shadow felt alive, each rustle of leaves a reminder that they had underestimated their prey. In a final act of defiance, the leader raised his weapon, scanning the trees for any sign of the survivor. But there was nothing, only the silence, heavy and oppressive, pressing in from all sides. And then he saw it, a faint glint in the distance, the broken spear with its ominous message, still standing as a silent testament to the fate that awaited any who dared enter this land. The survivor, watching from the shadows, waited until the leader lowered his weapon, defeated. Then, without a sound, they disappeared back into the jungle's depths, the dark canopy swallowing them completely. The jungle returned to its natural state, peaceful yet vigilant, waiting patiently for the next incursion, prepared to defend itself and its guardian once more. Far above, the ship's engines roared to life, retreating with the wounded and the dead. The tale of the jungle defender, the one who turned even the most ruthless hunters into prey, would continue to spread, growing in legend with each telling. And below, concealed by shadows and silence, the survivor waited, ready to defend their ground as they always had, a relentless guardian of the jungle's depths. For here, in this place, the rules of survival belonged to them, and to enter was to become part of a game that no outsider could ever hope to win. The jungle settled once more, an unyielding wall of green hiding its secrets beneath thick foliage and tangled vines. Each fallen leaf, each shift of the shadows, seemed to speak of stories known only to the jungle itself and to the lone survivor within its depths. This was a land that did not forgive trespassers, and its guardian was a silent, watchful force, a presence felt but rarely seen, one who moved in harmony with the wild, unpredictable rhythms of the forest. In the weeks that followed, the survivor continued to hone their defenses, refining old traps and devising new ones with an instinct born from years of evading and outmaneuvering predators. They fortified the jungle's natural defenses, using the land's own resources to create subtle but deadly snares that would ensnare any who dared to follow the same path as those before. Each trap was an extension of the survivor's will, designed not only to harm but to instill fear, to remind any would-be hunter that this ground was defended with unmatched precision and resilience. Beyond the jungle's edge, word of the failed hunts spread quickly. The tales of a seemingly ordinary human who had turned the galaxy's most feared hunters into prey began to circulate among the predator clans, whispered in awe and disbelief. Rumors grew with each retelling. Some said the survivor had supernatural abilities, others that the jungle itself was enchanted, a haunted realm where only the strongest could hope to survive. Skeptics dismissed it as exaggeration, yet the truth was undeniable. This world had claimed some of the fiercest warriors, leaving only silence and echoes in their place. The legends eventually reached the ears of an elite predator clan, a clan that specialized in reclaiming lost honor and restoring tarnished reputations. These hunters were seasoned veterans, each one skilled not only in physical combat but in the psychological nuances of a hunt. They prepared for weeks, studying the reports, analyzing the tactics that had led their brethren to failure. They would not be taken by surprise. They would adapt, anticipate, and, they believed, ultimately conquer the jungle's elusive defender. The morning of their arrival was heralded by an ominous silence. As the ship descended through the clouds, the jungle seemed to still, an almost tangible awareness settling over its inhabitants. The survivor, hidden in the shadows, felt the change in the air. These hunters were different, more disciplined, sharper, their movements measured and deliberate. The survivor observed them from a distance, tracking their precise formations, noting the advanced equipment they carried. This was not the same overconfident party of before. These hunters came with knowledge and caution. They advanced into the jungle, methodically checking each step, each potential hiding place. They employed heat scanners, sound amplifiers, and motion detectors to counter the dense camouflage of the forest. Their leader, an imposing figure with intricate armor that signified countless victories, led with a silent confidence, his every move suggesting a hunter who was as much strategist as warrior. But the survivor was ready, watching, waiting. They understood that this would not be a hunt of brute force, but one of strategy, patience, and timing. The jungle, a vast tapestry of intertwined roots, towering trees, and shifting shadows, became their weapon once more, a natural maze that could bend to the will of its guardian. The elite hunters moved deeper, finding no immediate traps. Their confidence began to grow as the jungle seemed almost too quiet, its deadly snares nowhere to be found. But as they pressed further, they encountered subtle signs, the faintest impressions in the soil, disturbed leaves arranged in an unnatural way. Their leader halted, recognizing the markers for what they were: warnings, a silent message left by the survivor, a reminder that they were not alone. One of the hunters detected movement on the periphery, a fleeting shadow darting through the trees. They aimed their weapons but found only empty air, the shadows swallowing their quarry before they could react. Their frustration simmered, yet they pressed on, determined to catch the elusive figure who had so deftly evaded them. The jungle responded to the hunter's presence, shifting subtly as though aiding its protector. The dense canopy blocked out light, casting the ground below in a dim, shifting gloom. Vines hung low, twisting into paths that wound endlessly, an organic labyrinth that turned the hunters' precision equipment into little more than dead weight. With every step, the hunters felt the survivors' presence, an intangible force guiding their movements into subtle traps, turning the jungle's quiet stillness into a taunting silence. Hours passed, each minute marked by a growing tension. The hunters advanced, but their formation was slowly unraveling, their coordinated steps faltering as they encountered the first of the survivors' newly laid traps. A hidden net sprang up, ensnaring one of the hunters who struggled against the unbreakable weave of vines. Another found himself at the edge of a concealed pit, barely able to stop himself from tumbling into its sharp spikes. The leader of the hunters growled low, frustration evident in his stance as he ordered his team to regroup, aware that they were once again being drawn into the web of an unseen adversary. He scanned the trees, catching fleeting glimpses of movement, a flicker of a figure that melted seamlessly into the shadows. Each glimpse was enough to unsettle, but never enough to confirm a target. Their methods were failing, and the jungle's oppressive atmosphere weighed on them like a silent adversary. For every advancement, there was a countermeasure, each one designed not only to harm but to weaken their resolve. And all the while, the survivor watched, calm and patient, waiting for the moment when their advantage would be undeniable. Finally, with their team fractured and their equipment proving unreliable, the leader made a fateful decision. He signaled his team to fall back, a rare retreat for such seasoned hunters. But just as they began to withdraw, the jungle revealed its final trap, a cascade of rocks that blocked their path, leaving them with no choice but to press onward, deeper into the labyrinthine forest. The survivor noted the shift with satisfaction. This was the moment they had prepared for. Moving with silent precision, they navigated the hidden trails, positioning themselves to exploit the hunters' weakened state. As the hunters moved further, their steps slower, their breaths labored, they began to realize that their retreat had become an advance into the heart of the survivors' domain. The jungle closed in around them, each shadow darker than before, each sound amplified. Their leader's resolve was cracking, his sharp commands faltering as he sensed the inevitability of their fate. In a final act of desperation, he called out, his voice echoing through the silent trees, a challenge meant to draw the survivor into the open. But the survivor remained hidden, the jungle responding to their will, silent and unyielding. The challenge hung unanswered, swallowed by the thick canopy, a reminder that here, in this place, the rules of the hunt were dictated by the one who knew it best. And as the darkness deepened, the survivor moved in, one with the shadows, a silent wraith who embodied the spirit of the jungle itself. One by one, the hunters fell, each defeated not by brute force, but by an adversary who had mastered every nuance of the hunt, every twist and turn of the forest. When the final hunter dropped, silence reclaimed the jungle, as though erasing every trace of the battle that had taken place. The survivor stood alone once more, the jungle's unchallenged guardian, and as dawn broke, they faded into the shadows, prepared for the next inevitable incursion. For as long as the hunters came, the survivor would be waiting, a relentless force defending a land that had become more than just home. It was their fortress, their battleground, a sacred place that would never fall. In the quiet that followed, the jungle's ancient spirit seemed to echo a single, timeless truth: those who entered as hunters would leave only as memories, shadows absorbed back into the vast, unforgiving embrace of the wilderness. As the sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting dappled patches of light onto the forest floor, the survivor moved quietly, blending seamlessly with the surrounding foliage. The jungle was silent now, its natural sounds gradually returning, as if acknowledging that the recent struggle was over. Yet, the survivors' vigilance never wavered. They knew the peace would be temporary. The predators would return, relentless in their desire to conquer this enigmatic terrain and defeat its elusive guardian. Days turned to weeks, and each dawn brought subtle changes in the landscape, as though the jungle itself was adapting, responding to the constant invasions. The survivor worked tirelessly, modifying old traps and creating new ones, each more intricate and deadly than the last. They fortified familiar paths with additional snares, transforming once passable routes into treacherous gauntlets of ambush points and hidden pitfalls. The jungle had become a fortress with countless defenses, a domain of danger known intimately only to the survivor. Beyond this isolated world, tales of the jungle's defenders spread throughout the predator clans. The stories took on a life of their own, growing more fearsome with each retelling. A lone human, it was said, wielded the jungle like a weapon, blending with the shadows to outsmart even the most skilled hunters. The galaxy's fiercest warriors listened with mixed feelings, some with awe, others with skepticism, and a few with a burning desire to face this legendary figure. The survivor had become an enigma, a figure both feared and respected, a testament to the power of resilience and adaptation. Among those who heard these stories was a new clan, one known for their ruthlessness and unmatched skill in tracking and eliminating the most elusive targets. Led by an elder predator renowned for his cunning and strategic prowess, this clan made preparations to confront the survivor. They gathered intelligence, studying maps of the terrain, analyzing reports from previous hunts, and preparing an arsenal designed specifically to counter any tactic that the jungle might throw at them. They were determined not to repeat the mistakes of their predecessors. When their ship finally descended onto the jungle's edge, the survivor felt its presence immediately. The air grew tense, charged with the familiar hum of approaching engines, the faint vibrations resonating through the trees. This time, the hunters were taking no chances. They disembarked slowly, each movement precise, their eyes scanning the shadows with the sharpened gaze of those who had been forewarned. They advanced with an air of quiet determination, weapons at the ready, prepared for the tricks and traps that had become infamous among their kind. The survivor watched from a distance, assessing each hunter, noting their formations, their discipline, and the cautious way they moved. They knew this hunt would test them in new ways, requiring strategies as complex as the hunters who now invaded their territory. The jungle, as if sensing the gravity of this new challenge, seemed to close in protectively around its guardian, casting deep shadows and twisting paths into a maze even more formidable than before. The hunters moved in unison, undeterred by the thick underbrush or the low-hanging vines that marked the jungle's boundaries. Their leader signaled for scans, and advanced technology hummed softly, creating a web of detection fields intended to neutralize any hidden traps. But the survivor had anticipated this, having meticulously prepared layers of traps that could bypass even the most advanced sensors. The survivor worked tirelessly, modifying old traps and creating new ones, each more intricate and deadly than the last. They fortified familiar paths with additional snares, transforming once passable routes into treacherous gauntlets of ambush points and hidden pitfalls. The jungle had become a fortress with countless defenses, a domain of danger known intimately only to the survivor. Beyond this isolated world, tales of the jungle's defenders spread throughout the predator clans. The stories took on a life of their own, growing more fearsome with each retelling. A lone human, it was said, wielded the jungle like a weapon, blending with the shadows to outsmart even the most skilled hunters. Concealed pits, nearly invisible wire snares, and camouflaged netting lay in wait, each carefully positioned along paths the hunters would inevitably cross. Soon, the first trap triggered. A barely perceptible wire snapped, releasing a weighted branch that swung out, narrowly missing one of the hunters. Though he dodged with skill, the close call rattled the group, a reminder that their supposed safeguards weren't foolproof. The hunter snarled in frustration, his hand brushing against a gash where the branch had grazed his armor. Their leader growled a command, urging them forward, their confidence tempered but undeterred. The survivor observed each reaction with a quiet intensity, noting the shifts in formation, the slight tremors of unease. Every movement was another piece in a calculated game, each trap a step in a larger plan to dismantle the hunter's composure. As the hours stretched on, the hunters encountered more traps, each one designed to erode their confidence, testing their resolve and wearing down their patience. One hunter, tired and momentarily distracted, triggered a concealed pit. He stumbled back, barely avoiding a fall, his heart pounding as he looked up at his comrades, who shared wary glances. The survivor watched from above, hidden in the dense foliage, studying the leader's reactions with sharp, calculating eyes. They could sense the leader's mounting frustration, his struggle to maintain control over a team that was beginning to fray at the edges. As dusk approached, the jungle grew darker, its shadows deepening as night set in. The hunters activated low-light vision, but the shadows seemed to thicken around them, playing tricks on their senses. The jungle, alive with its own silent menace, felt as though it was closing in, pressing down on them as if aware of their alien presence. Each creak of a branch, each whisper of leaves, felt amplified in the darkness, feeding their unease. In the dim light, a figure flickered at the edge of their vision, a brief glimpse of the survivor slipping through the shadows, a silent phantom in the darkness. One hunter raised his weapon and fired, the shot tearing through foliage, but hitting nothing but air. The silence that followed was thicker, heavier, as the hunters realized they were dealing with more than just an opponent. They were confronting the jungle itself. The survivor continued to evade them, guiding them deeper into their carefully prepared maze. The hunters, aware that they were being toyed with, grew tense, their disciplined movements faltering as the mental strain took hold. This hunt was no longer about strength or weaponry, it was a battle of wills, a clash between their determination to conquer and the survivors' relentless defense of their ground. As midnight approached, the jungle seemed to pulse with a life of its own, an ancient, silent warning that these intruders were unwelcome. One by one, the hunters fell prey to the traps, their resolve unraveling with each setback. The survivor moved through the shadows like a specter, unseen yet always present, using the terrain to isolate each hunter, ensuring they felt the weight of their solitude. The leader, now isolated, stood alone in a clearing, surrounded by darkness and silence. His pride and anger clashed with a growing sense of dread. He had come expecting a worthy opponent, but he was now faced with something far more formidable, a defender who had become one with the jungle, who knew every sound, every shadow. The jungle felt alive around him, a force of nature conspiring with the survivor to expel him. The survivor emerged, just at the edge of the clearing, their form barely visible. The leader, gripping his weapon tightly, raised it in a final act of defiance, a desperate bid to turn the tide. But the survivor did not move. They stood as a silent sentinel, the jungle's true guardian, their eyes fixed on the leader, a steady gaze that held no fear. "This is my ground," the survivor's voice cut through the silence, low and unyielding, carrying the weight of countless battles fought and won. The leader's grip faltered, his pride cracking under the crushing realization that he had been bested, not by a weapon, but by an unbreakable will and an unwavering spirit. With a final glance, the survivor melted back into the shadows, disappearing as if they had never been there. The leader, now alone, felt the full weight of his defeat settle on him,